My name is Maria Dalton, and I'm about to turn 27 this year. For the past 5 years, I've been married to my husband, Kevin, and together we have a sweet little boy named Martin, who just celebrated his 4th birthday. In the early years of our marriage, I worked full-time at the same company where I had started before tying the knot, but after Martin was born, I switched to part-time work so I could spend more time with him. My life wasn't perfect, but I thought it was happy, steady, simple, and filled with love. Kevin, now 30, had once been the man of my dreams, charming, confident, and deeply attentive. He had pursued me passionately, showering me with affection and promises of a beautiful future together. But after marriage, something inside him began to shift. The warmth and tenderness I had fallen for slowly faded, replaced by a cold, controlling presence that made me feel small in my own home. Kevin also had a younger sister, Jane Dalton, 20 years old, and their relationship had always been oddly close. I initially admired how protective he was of her. I assumed she was just a carefree younger sister who looked up to her big brother, but after our wedding, her behavior began to cross lines I could no longer ignore. Jane visited constantly, often without a single call or text beforehand. She'd barge in as if the house were hers, drop her bag on the sofa, and exclaim, "Brother, I'm here again," without so much as acknowledging me. I'd still smile politely, though I wasn't prepared for guests. Kevin, instead of correcting her or helping me, would simply expect me to serve her like an honored guest. No matter how tired I was from work or childcare, I'd find myself setting the table again, adding another plate, cooking extra rice, while Jane scrolled through her phone, completely ignoring me. Kevin would chat with her cheerfully, occasionally scolding me for not being considerate enough. Jane would smirk and mutter half-hearted apologies, clearly enjoying the attention her brother gave her. After dinner, they'd move to the couch, chatting and laughing as if I didn't exist, leaving the table cluttered with plates. Sometimes, I'd watch them from the kitchen, cleaning in silence while Martin tugged at my sleeve asking why Daddy wasn't playing with us. Those were the moments I began to realize how invisible I had become in my own home. One night, as I was preparing to give Martin a bath, Kevin's loud voice echoed from the living room. "Maria, go buy a cake for Jane," he ordered. I paused, confused. "Now? It's late, can't we get it tomorrow?" Jane, lounging on the couch, pouted dramatically, "But I want it today, brother, I've been craving cake all evening." Kevin glared at me. "Why are you being so difficult? Can't you just go?" It stung, his tone, his complete lack of empathy. Suppressing my anger, I grabbed my bag. Martin, sensing my mood, clung to me and whispered, "Can I come too, Mama?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Of course, sweetheart." As we walked out, I overheard their voices through the slightly open window. "She's so inconsiderate," Jane complained. "I know," Kevin sighed. "Sometimes I wonder why I even married her." The words cut deep, but I stayed silent. I didn't want my son to see me cry. At the cake shop, just before closing time, Martin excitedly pointed at a fruit-covered cake. "This one, Mama, with lots of strawberries," he said, his eyes sparkling. I bought 2 cakes, one for Jane, and the fruit one for Martin. For a brief moment, the sight of my son's joy eased the ache in my heart. When we returned, I placed Jane's cake before her and Kevin. Then, I brought Martin his fruit cake and set it gently in front of him, but Jane immediately pointed at it. "I want that one," she said with a childish whine. Before I could respond, Kevin stood, grabbed Martin's plate, and placed it in front of Jane. "Kevin," I gasped. Martin's little voice trembled. "Daddy, that was my cake." Kevin coldly replied, "I paid for it, I'll decide who eats what." My patience shattered. "Do you even hear yourself? He's your son." Kevin's eyes hardened. "If you don't like it, Maria, maybe we shouldn't be together." His voice dropped low. "Maybe it's time for a divorce." The room went silent. Even Jane looked uneasy for a moment. Then Martin, my brave little boy, wiped his tears and whispered, "It's okay, Mama, I also love cake with strawberries. It's really yummy." He forced a smile through his pain. I gathered him into my arms and lifted his plate just as Jane reached for it again. "That's enough," I said firmly. I carried Martin to his room, leaving Kevin apologizing to Jane for my rudeness. That night, Martin and I shared quiet laughter while finishing the remaining fruit cake. Watching him enjoy every bite reminded me what truly mattered. We took our bath together, and I let him fall asleep beside me. The next morning, The house was unusually quiet. Jane was gone. As I prepared breakfast, I heard Martin crying. His little piggy bank, a gift from my late father, was shattered on the floor. All the coins he had saved were missing. Through tears, Martin stammered, "Mama, who broke Piggy?" When I confronted Kevin, he shrugged. Jane needed some cash, so she took it. Don't make a big deal out of it. I was speechless. He had let his sister steal from his own son. Martin sobbed quietly in my arms, and I wept with him. That was the moment something inside me broke completely. When I raised my voice at Kevin, demanding respect and boundaries, he simply left, returning minutes later with divorce papers in hand. He threw them onto the table and stormed out, the door slamming so hard that Martin jumped in fear. I decided right then that Martin and I needed a break, from the house, from Kevin, from the pain. "Want to stay home with Mama today?" I asked softly. He sniffled but nodded, "Yes." We spent the day together, just the two of us. We played in the park, built castles in the sandbox, and shared ice cream under the morning sun. For a few precious hours, I saw pure joy in Martin's eyes again. When we came home, he fell asleep in my lap, just like when he was a baby. I sat there quietly, letting his steady breathing soothe me, until a sudden creak at the front door sent chills down my spine. It wasn't Kevin's usual time to return. Holding Martin close, I tiptoed to the bedroom closet and peeked through the slats. The voice that followed froze my blood. It was Jane. She was rummaging through drawers, muttering, "Where is it?" He said it was here somewhere. Then she made a phone call, to Kevin. Her words confirmed my fear. They were searching for something valuable. When she finally left, I packed a small bag, grabbed Martin's hand, and left the house without looking back. We took the train to my parents' home 2 stations away. My mother opened the door, and before I could speak, she pulled me into her arms. "You don't have to explain," she said softly. That night, after Martin fell asleep, I told my parents everything, the fights, the piggy bank, the divorce papers, Jane's intrusion. My mother frowned deeply. "She was probably looking for your money or cards, Maria, you know how they are." Her words stirred an old truth I had buried for years. Kevin didn't know that I was still the CEO of the handmade goods company I had built before marriage. I had stepped back to focus on family life, but I never relinquished my ownership. As I stared at the divorce papers in my bag, I realized Kevin might have known more than I thought. Maybe the man who once claimed to love me had only ever loved what I could provide. And that night, as the rain pattered softly outside my parents' window, I made a silent vow, to protect my son, my dignity, and the life I had worked so hard to build. I had always kept one thing from Kevin, the truth about who I really was. He believed I was just a part-time employee, earning a modest income, but in reality, I was still the CEO of the handmade goods company I had built before marriage. I had stepped back from public view when Martin was born, letting my close friends manage day-to-day operations, but the business, and the savings, remained mine. This secrecy wasn't born from deceit, it was protection. I realized early in our marriage that Kevin had no real grasp of financial responsibility. He spent every cent he earned, buying unnecessary gadgets, treating his friends, or indulging his sister Jane. At first, I tried to reason with him, to save, to plan, to build something together, but Kevin always brushed me off, insisting, "I'm the man of the house, I'll handle the money." His handling meant giving me a mere $200 a month for food and household expenses. "Make it work," he'd say casually, slipping the bills onto the table as if it were a generous offer. I never complained aloud, but raising a growing boy on that amount was impossible. I had to dip into my own savings just to make sure Martin had nutritious meals, clean clothes, and school supplies. When Kevin suggested I quit my job and become a full-time housewife, I refused. It wasn't just about independence anymore, it was survival. Eventually, he allowed me to work part-time, though not without resentment, to ensure I would never consider leaving. Kevin later made me sign a post-marital property waiver through a lawyer, an agreement that in the event of divorce, I couldn't claim any of his assets. The irony, of course, was that he had almost none to begin with. Since Martin's birth, nearly everything, his nursery fees, clothes, medical bills, came from my earnings. I had never asked Kevin for more than the $200 food budget, and over time, he grew suspicious of how I managed so well. He began to believe I had a secret savings stash, and in a way, he was right. Each month, I quietly transferred a portion of my pay into a separate account under Martin's name, a small seed for his future. No one knew about it, not even Kevin. I carried my cash cards with me at all times and never left valuables in the house. But lately, a chilling thought had begun to trouble me. Jane might have been entering our home when I wasn't there, possibly with Kevin's knowledge. After hearing from my parents about her suspicious behavior, I followed my father's advice and decided to keep all my important items, cards, documents, jewelry, safely locked in my parents' house. Still, unease lingered. One evening, Martin approached my father in tears, holding the remnants of his broken piggy bank. His little hands trembled as he said, "Grandpa, Jane took my money." My father's expression darkened immediately. "She what?" When I explained what had happened, that Kevin had permitted it, he clenched his fists, furious. "That man's gone too far. I'll call him right now." My mother gently placed a hand on his arm. "Let's stay calm," she said. "We need to know what they're after before making a move. Kevin's mention of divorce might be an attempt to shift blame. Let's be smart about this." Her words made sense. If I confronted him unprepared, he might manipulate the situation in his favor. So, I took her advice, and decided to record our next conversation. When I returned home, I hid my phone face down on the counter, camera and mic active. Then I began cooking dinner, pretending everything was normal. The moment Kevin walked in, he didn't even greet me. "Where are your cash cards?" he demanded. I froze for a moment. "Why are you asking?" He shrugged, his tone evasive. "Just curious, you always hide things." I said nothing, continuing to chop vegetables, but I could feel his eyes on me, sharp and restless. "Don't play dumb, Maria," he snapped. "Jane needs money, and you're her sister-in-law. You should help family." "Help?" I turned to face him, keeping my voice steady. "You mean take my son's savings to pay for her debts?" He slammed his hand on the table. "You think you're better than us because you work part-time? You live off my money." My knife stopped midair. "Your money," I said quietly, "the same $200 that barely covers food for a week?" He glared at me, his pride stung. Then he grabbed the divorce papers from the drawer, the same ones he'd once waved like a threat, and pushed them toward me. "Take these. I'm serious this time," he said, voice trembling with rage. "Get out. I don't want a wife who disrespects me." His words struck something deep inside me, not fear, not sadness, but finality. I looked at the papers, then at him. "Then I won't stay in a house where strangers come and go as they please," I said firmly. I packed a small bag, took Martin's hand, and walked to the door. Kevin shouted after me, declaring, "Don't ever come back." I didn't look back. Outside, the evening air felt cool and free. My phone buzzed repeatedly in my pocket, message after message, call after call from Kevin, but I ignored them all. I switched it off and walked straight to my parents' house. That night, I showed my father the recording and the divorce papers. His face hardened, but my mother simply hugged me and said, "You did the right thing." I confessed that whatever affection I once had for Kevin was gone, but I still worried for Martin, how the divorce might affect him. My parents told me gently that I needed to choose peace over pain, reminding me that a child's happiness depends on his mother's strength. While we were talking, Martin tugged at my sleeve and said softly, "Mama, I'm hungry." My mother smiled and went to the kitchen. "How about Grandma's hamburgers?" Minutes later, the warm scent filled the room. Martin's eyes lit up as he took the first bite. "Grandma, this is so good. I want to eat this every day." I laughed through tears. "That's because Grandma made it with love." Martin grinned, tore off a big piece, and held it up to my lips. "Then you eat it too, Mama." My heart swelled. I tried to hold back tears, but they came anyway. My father, noticing Martin's worried look, said gently, "Don't worry, son, those are happy tears." Martin hugged me tightly, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, home. My father's eyes grew misty as he watched us. "Family is precious," I whispered to Martin. He looked up and asked innocently, "But Dad said Aunt Jane is his only family. Are we not family too?" My father placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are, Martin, and from now on, we'll always be together." Martin giggled. "Then I'll live here with Mama and you and Grandma, and with the dog. He can be my little brother." We all laughed. In that moment, the heaviness in my heart began to lift. That night, I made my decision. I would divorce Kevin and never look back. The next morning, My father's lawyer friend came by, and we began formal preparations. My parents offered unwavering support, and Martin spent the day playing with my father, their laughter filling the house. When I finally turned my phone back on, I was stunned. Over 200 missed calls and dozens of messages from Kevin. Most were angry at first, but as time passed, his tone grew desperate and confused. Later, with my lawyer's help, I learned the truth. Jane had massive debts, from casino gambling and compulsive shopping, and Kevin, foolishly, had acted as her guarantor. They had been trying to find my savings to pay it off. By then, it was too late. The lawyer had already submitted our divorce papers. When Kevin realized the divorce was final, he broke down and cried, apologizing weakly. I expected anger or pleading, but instead, there was exhaustion in his voice, the sound of a man defeated by his own choices. He agreed to pay $340 a month in child support, signing a written pledge. In his final call to me, he admitted everything: the financial manipulation, his guilt, and his confused loyalty to Jane. I didn't mean for things to end like this, he whispered. I just lost control. You made your choice, Kevin, I said calmly. Now I'm making mine. There was silence, then a faint sob. I hope you find happiness, he said before hanging up. Weeks later, I officially resumed my position as company president. My parents supported me, and Martin adjusted beautifully, cheerful, curious, and surrounded by love. Word eventually reached me that Kevin and Jane had been disowned by their parents after learning about the debts and divorce. I didn't feel vengeance or triumph, only relief. Now, when I watch Martin play in the garden, laughing freely under the sunlight, I realize that peace isn't found in wealth or status. It's found in the quiet, ordinary moments, in love freely given, in family that stays. And for the first time in years, I feel truly happy.